Hey guys, welcome to 7 drum editing tips in 7 days. This is the final tip, the final episode of this short mini-series. So if you've enjoyed this, then please let me know in the comments. I'd love to do more stuff like this in the future. So if you guys want more of it, I'll happily create something similar to this again in the future. So this tip number 7, this final video is all about how to mix your drums with a backing track on a drum cover. A lot of people have asked me about this. I'm a full-time drum editor and I spend a lot of time as well mixing people's covers for them. And they've asked me, how do you manage to get the song well in the background without it taking over your drums? So it's great if you can get a backing track that has no drums in, but this often isn't the case, as was the case with this cover that I've done for my friend called Dylan. It's a cover of When the Party's Over, which is actually a cover of the original song by Billie Eilish, which was done by Our Last Night. So the thing is, you want the song to be heard, so your drums have context, but at the same time, you don't want the drums in the original track to interfere with your drums, because it's taking away your performance, and it's also causing that flammy effect, because of course your drums that you record to this song aren't exactly in time with the drums in the original song, and that causes that flammy effect. But there's a few things you can do to separate your drums from the drums in an original track, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So first of all, I'm going to let you listen through to the drums now, and I'm going to introduce the backing track, and you'll be able to hear how it sounds a bit too messy. You can't really tell what the drum cover is, you can't tell what the original drums are, and it's causing that flammy, messy effect.
I'm on my own.
So you could hear it in that last section especially, and we want to get rid of that. So the first thing that you can do is very simple. It doesn't take a genius, it's just basically with the level. And I usually, with the drum kit sitting at a decent level as a whole, like that's the whole drum kit together, not peaking obviously above 0 dB, but hovering around that spot around -3 dB, to have your backing track at about -10, maybe even -12 decibels, something around that area. So what I'm going to do now, the first thing I'm going to do is lower the volume so the backing track sits around that volume. So right now I've got mine at about -9 dB. I wouldn't lower it any more than that actually. It's just enough to distinguish what part of the song it is, to hear the vocals, but it isn't overpowering the actual drum performance. So the thing is, you're still getting that interference with the drums though, because the frequencies are still there. So what we need to do now is cut them frequencies out to stop that interference. So the main things that you want to get rid of in this main backing track is the kick and snare, and obviously you can't get rid of them entirely because it's just a single file, but we can use EQ to dampen the major frequencies of both the kick and snare, so that interference isn't quite as big as it is now. So for this example, I'm going to solo this just to show you out of context how to actually affect the sound in order to stop that interference. So this is a track soloed. So you can hear the kick and snare very prominent. It's a metal mix, the kick and snare very loud. The kick has them high clicky, 8K-ish frequencies that are standing out. So we want to get rid of them as good as we can. So the main thing that I target with a kick to start with is the low end, and you have to be delicate with this because you don't want to get rid of the bass guitar and all the low frequencies, but you just want to get rid of that main punch, that main body of the kick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these parametric filters, and I'm just going to play around with this until I feel like the low end of the kick has been dampened down a bit. So you can hear there, I actually boosted it for a while to find out the area that had the most amount of low end. I originally thought it was about 80 to 100 because usually that's where I find it. But in this case, it was towards a 50, 60 hertz mark. And that just must be the mix itself having a lower kick drum with more low end frequencies. So I'm going to A/B this now and you'll be able to tell the difference. So don't get me wrong, the kick is still pretty prominent, but a lot of that low end has been scooped out. The thing is, because it's a metal mix, like I said, there's a lot of them high end frequencies, which is actually where most of the content is in metal music, or at least a lot of it. So we've got rid of some of that low end, so that prevents that clashing. So now we're going to get rid of some of this high clicky end and try to get some of that scooped out. So to do this, I'm going to use the exact same method as I did before. I'm going to boost the frequencies, find out where most of the click is, and then I'm going to cut in that area. So yeah, again, not perfect, but you're getting some of that harshness out the high end of the clicky part of the kick. So the next thing to focus on is the snare. So we're going to focus on the main punch, the main body of the snare, which sits around 200 hertz. Using the same process again, we're going to find that frequency and dampen it down. Yet again, not too much that it ruins the sound of the track, but that it stops that snare in the backing track interfering with your snare. So there we go. You can see very obviously, even by looking at the graphic part of this, after cutting that, you can tell that it's dampened down a fair bit in this main area. It's just these main areas that you want to cut. So let's just A/B this now and listen to the difference. So the snare sounds much weaker, and so does especially the low end of the kick. So as you know, toms and overheads take up an even bigger part of this frequency spectrum, and it's going to be very hard to target them. So what I usually do with the overheads is I do a little bit of a high shelf cut here, and occasionally I'll use a bit of a cut around here, so something not too big, and that's pretty much all I'll do. So now if I was to play this, it'd probably be quiet as well, so I can actually raise the track up a bit higher to make up that 9 decibels level that it was before. But obviously it'll be quiet now because we've cut out a lot of frequencies. So we'll get this to about 9 decibels again, and then we'll put it in context with the drums and we'll listen to the difference. So you can still hear the bass, the vocals, the guitars, everything's still very clear. We've just not got as much power with the kick and snare, which is going to be better than just having the backing track playing there with the song. So let's listen to it all in context together now. So there we go, we can hear the drums, the performance much more clearly. There's very little interference between the drums on the original track and on the recorded drums for this performance. So it's amazing how such little EQ cuts like that, just to a couple of areas, can make a big difference in the sound of your drum covers. So very simple to do. I'd recommend just following this the way it is now. Let me know how you get on. Let me know if this works for you. Let me know if you have any other methods of doing something similar to this in your drum covers. Most importantly, I hope this has helped you out today.